After more than a year of devastating financial losses, the global cruise industry is slowly coming back to life. International journeys from England are now allowed to resume after a 16-month enforced break. I spoke to Jaime Katz, a senior equity analyst at Morningstar in Chicago, about the pandemic's impact on the industry.
I think when we look at the cruise industry, what is really interesting is that it was the only travel industry that was completely shut down for a period of time. Hotels were still open, planes were still flying. So there was a disproportionate impact on the cruise industry from COVID-19. And I think that we see that that's still lingering by that graduated return to sailing that we see right now.
So as you say, that is still lingering. How can the cruise industry turn those losses around?
So the cruise industry has worked pretty hard in assessing and implementing what might be the best way to resume cruising without having a material outbreak on the ships. And I think, as you've seen probably across multiple news outlets in recent weeks, there have been isolated incidents where COVID cases have been found, and they've been able to take those cases off the ship, whether they were symptomatic or asymptomatic, trace who those people were with, and be able to get those passengers home safely on private planes or private boats. And that way, the risk of spreading to other passengers by other venues has been really mitigated.
But obviously that fear will still exist amongst potential customers that there could be an outbreak and then everything that will follow on from that. So what can cruise operators do to counteract that?
I think part of what they're doing is trying to make the ships cleaner all around, right? So different air filtration systems, fewer people touching items, maybe lower capacity in theaters for the current time, lower capacity at activities, a certain number of people or constraints in the spa environment. And in doing that, they're better able to control how many people are really touching different points on the ship and taking the time to properly clean them after they're being used, so that there is a minimization of the spread of any virus that potentially slips onto the ships.
And obviously the cruise industry will look a little different going forward. What's the future for it amid these new constraints and constantly changing rules?
So I think flexibility is going to be key here. And I think at least domestically, we've seen the cruise industry has had to navigate some changing state legislation, changing federal legislation, government oversights. And of course, that varies by country globally. So I think, we're going to see pretty consistent changes throughout as we get more information and knowledge and best ways how to handle this and how to handle different variants, and having some flexibility or slack in the operational system to do that is going to be something I think we'll see more of ahead.
And obviously COVID, the big challenge, but other challenges ahead too for the cruise industry, such as environmental concerns.
That's true. And environmental concerns have been something that have been addressed by the cruise industry for an extended period of time. Obviously, there have been different sulfur byproduct rules that they've had to follow by different maritime laws that have changed over time. And so I think the cruise industry tries to adapt as best as it can. There is always going to be some energy burn, whether that's by a battery down the road or some other more green source. And so doing that in the safest and most efficient way is probably how we're going to be moving forward from a lot of these operators.
So will the industry bounce back, do you think? Do you think that people will still want to go cruising?
I think the demand is still there. We're still seeing, bookings that are pretty positive. I don't think cruisers are assuming that COVID is going to be a perpetual virus that is not going to be managed. So people do want to get out and travel. We've seen the TSA numbers, at least domestically, hold up pretty well, despite the fact that the Delta variant is spreading over here. And so I think, there is still a lot of interest in traveling different ways, including on cruise ships. And so I don't think that this is going to permanently damage the potential for the industry.